A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect this house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other.
Shall it be peace or a sword? Those were the words Abraham Lincoln chose to end his inaugural address in March of 1861. That is, until his Secretary of State persuaded him to soften his tone.
We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of this union when touched again, as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature.
Many of those angels were no longer listening to the new president. 7 states had already seceded from the Union. Several border states, including Tennessee, still hung in the balance. Secession would not only tear our nation apart, but also its states, communities, even families. Nowhere was the debate more heated than Tennessee. Some were willing to lay down their lives for what they saw as a threat to their way of life, while others were equally willing to die to preserve the Union they loved. The Civil War is figuratively referred to as a conflict of brother against brother. In Tennessee, it was a cold, hard fact. By the mid-19th century, nearly 4 million human beings were the property of Southern slaveholders. More than 250,000 of those slaves lived in Tennessee. 1/4 of the state's population owned by 1/4 of the state's families.
What Tennesseans produced and made had a lot to do with their attitudes about slavery. In the eastern part of the state, there were few slaves. You did not have the large industries that you found in the western and middle parts of the state, nor did you have many of the large plantations. Tennessee had reached new heights of prosperity. Its plantations and farms were producing a wide diversity of crops, from such staples as cotton and tobacco and corn, and it was really becoming a major breadbasket of the South. And that was because we had a really mature railroad system. And then you had the major river port of Memphis that was growing by leaps and bounds, particularly as the Cotton Kingdom really was taking root in the state. The closer you are to the Tennessee River, the fewer slaves there were in West Tennessee. But once you moved off that hilly countryside and into the really Tennessee Delta, that's where slavery flourished.
In Middle and West Tennessee, slavery was considered an essential part of daily life. It provided the economic and social foundation for these regions. Slaves meant wealth and prestige. The patriarchs of this society, plantation owners and professionals, made up 10% of the population, but enjoyed 75% of its wealth and held most of the important political offices as well. Meanwhile, Northerners were becoming increasingly appalled by the immorality of slavery. The publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852 added fuel to the fire. Harriet Beecher Stowe's book about the evils of slavery was the best-selling novel of the 19th century. The book outraged both sides of the slavery issue. Abolitionists were horrified by the cruelties portrayed in the novel, while pro-slavery factions claimed it was pure fiction.
That was one of the turning points. That's where it makes it difficult for the slaveocracy, that slave-owning class that rules the South, to defend itself. There's no such thing as good slavery. Once you read Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, you say, wow, that's why I'm against slavery.